Welcome to Built with Grit. I am your host and strategic partner in cost reduction, Luis Fernandez. And today I'm joined with my friend, Patricia, and she's got an amazing story to tell today about starting her business and the journey she's been through. And I'm very excited to get into it. So how are you doing today, friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. So why don't we start first with you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll kind of talk about your journey getting there.
Okay. Well, my name is Patricia Baranowski Schneider. I run an investor relations, public relations, media relations, and marketing firm called Pristine Advisors. Been doing that for over 33 years. We work with companies around the world. For the investor relations side, we deal with companies that are listed on the stock exchange. And we're kind of the middleman between the company and the investment community, being investors, analysts, brokers, and media. And the public relations side is we're marketing anybody and anyone to the world. So it's kind of us in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So talk to me, tell me a little bit, let's back it up. So now we know like kind of where you are. Talk to me about where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Manhattan. I now live in Long Island, but I grew up in Manhattan, which is funny. Everybody here calls it the concrete jungle. And I love Manhattan, love it, love it. Born and raised there. And I just find that people on Long Island just have no desire to ever go into the city because it's not, I will say it's not like beautiful, but there's so much history and so much to see there. So born and raised in Manhattan and Chelsea, which is always evolving, especially now post-COVID, but yeah, it's still such a cool place to be.
For us, like non-New York City folks, like all I heard you say was, I was born in New York City, but now I live in New York City, right? Like,
well, no, it's funny. Facebook has all these groups on there where they feel if you've left Manhattan, you're not a real New York. I'm like, oh, so am. I mean, I still go there whenever I can.
Yeah. All right. So you were growing up in Manhattan, and then what? Yeah, at some point you took off from there.
Well, I'm born and raised there. It's funny. I moved at one point to Pennsylvania. I was actually looking for a place to live, and I had found years and years ago that any place close to Manhattan was super expensive. So even in New Jersey, it was like you would get this teeny tiny home for so much money. And the further out I went, you got more home for less money. Yeah. So I reached the point of New Jersey and I was like, okay, I'll go one exit more. So we went to the first exit into PA, which was Bushkill, and beautiful home, 7 acres of land. It was like so cheap. But I made the mistake of looking for the home on nights and weekends. So, obviously not much traffic. So the first day I'm going to work, we hit 3 hours of traffic because I worked in Manhattan. And I'm thinking, wow, that's odd. Must have been an accident. Going home, 3 hours of traffic. I'm like, wow, was it an accident again? Next day, 3 hours of traffic. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I tried every which way to navigate around that. There was one train at the time that ran from New Jersey. So I figured if I drove partway there and hopped on the train, but the problem with that was like the trains ran at weird hours. So if you missed that train because of traffic, your next train might not be for 3 hours. So I was like, okay, that's not going to work. There was a bus that left from there, but they sat in the same traffic that we did. So then I got as far as driving to New Jersey to the Vince Lombardi Park and Ride, because I figured, okay, from there, it might save me like 30 minutes because that bus takes its own separate lane to go through the tunnel. Jeez. And I'm just like, it was just insane. And then I even tried carpooling at one point thinking that would save some of the strain, but it was tricky because at that point I was suffering from migraine headaches. So if I had a migraine, I can't even leave because I have somebody else to drive. And then if our job closed early that day or holiday or whatnot, I still can't leave because of them. So I realized quickly that wasn't, so I didn't stay in PA long. So that was like a one and done deal. Went back to Manhattan, and then I met my husband, and I moved out to Long Island to be with him like 15 years ago.
Man, I can't imagine 6 hours of travel to get to work. That's the whole day. That's
yeah.
It
just, I met people there actually that did that on a daily basis. And it was tricky. It was either the husband was commuting and the wife was home. So I was like, that's a husband who just doesn't want to be home, I guess.
Yeah.
And another one was the whole family that the kids went to school in Manhattan. The husband and wife commuted. But I was like, how do you even enjoy a home? Because the only time you get to really do anything is the weekends,
Right.
I was like, that's kind of defeats the whole purpose.
That seems tough. I've seen like the little videos that show like the population in Manhattan throughout the day.
Yeah.
And it's like, these spikes and drops and spikes and drops. And I can't imagine, like, I'm sure that now in a post pandemic world, that the tolerance for that is probably decreased a significant amount from employees,
Yeah.
because if I
It's just
can
super.
roll out of my bed onto a computer
Yeah.
and work for 8 hours, and then that's it. Now I have all this extra time after my 8-hour day.
Yeah. Well, I think too that, post COVID, I think we'll never get back to a total normal, because like, even with me, I've been doing remote work long before COVID. I was working for a company back then, and that company, it was kind of weird. I worked for a company for 15 years. They were closing their department. So I was like, okay, I need to go to another job. So I wound up going to a company that had absolutely nothing at all to do with what I did. But I figured, okay, you know what, I can go join them, make this a full service agency. And, basically I have a company name to go to. So I did that. But then after 2 years, they realized, okay, we need the office space. We don't even do the same thing you do. So do you want to work from home? At that point, my kids were grown. They were out of the house. I was like, yeah, okay. So I set up a home office. So I've been doing this for a long, long time. But it just goes to show you the amount of rent people don't want to have to incur, renting a space if they can just use an office. So now, I mean, in Manhattan, you're paying for hallway space. I mean, you just pay for everything. Then it's super expensive. So I think now, with most people working remote, people realize how much money they can save. Where if you had an office for 100 people, maybe you can get one for 25. And so, but I will say that it's not for everyone. Like, I remember we were working with someone else who was doing remote at one point, and every time we called him, you can hear the waves in the background. And we're like, he's at the beach. And he's like, no, I'm working. Then he would say, well, I'm working London hours. I'm like, yeah, but your clients are in Mexico. So it's definitely not for everyone. So but I do think that they'll realize by now who can and can't work remote. And I think that a lot of people are going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it makes sense all around, right? It makes sense for the company. It makes sense for the individuals that can as well, though. But I have a friend. He's a real estate agent there in New York City, and he posted a thing the other day about this beautiful condo. It was like a 2-bedroom condo for sale, and what a deal it was at $2 million something.
Yeah,
and
it's insane how much money goes in there.
so I went to Zillow here in Tucson, and I found the $2 million home, and it's like this. It's like a 9,000 square foot with mountain views.
It's insane. I mean, we have a lot of friends who live there, and you can have a studio apartment in there and pay like $20,000 a month for an apartment. I mean, it's just ridiculous,
I've never understood how folks afford that living, right?
You know,
because there are people doing like menial jobs there. Like,
yeah. Well, even from way back when, my daughter was looking for an apartment when she was graduated school, and I started like apartment shopping with her. And you would find that people, like, I'll never forget one apartment. It was considered a studio. They didn't even have a kitchen. They basically had a microwave and like a little under the microwave, little so-called refrigerator, which was basically like a box where you kept your food. Your one room, which was probably half the size of my bedroom, was the living room and bedroom. I mean, and I think that apartment was going for $1,800 a month, but it was like across the street from the Port Authority. So to them, it was a matter of convenience. And I always found that people, just to say they live in Manhattan, you would have like 15 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and everybody's just sleeping on couch, but they can say we live in Manhattan. And the reality is, like, there's a lot of work in Manhattan. So to avoid commuting, people just felt it was more convenient. But I'm like, it's just insane. It's really not worth it. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
But I always say, what do I know?
Yeah. All right.
What do I know?
So talk to us about starting your own business, and that kind of initial leap from, because it's a mental shift just as much as it is a financial and everything else shift too. Going from I'm going to be an employee and look for a job to I'm going to make a job.
Yeah. Well, the one company I mentioned that I stayed at for 15, I was almost 16 years, and I wound up going to the other company. So it was kind of a good thing that they kind of forced me to work remotely, because I was doing that anyway. Now I kind of got the sense of, okay, the only difference, you don't even know what it is I do. The only difference is the paycheck, the company's that our clients paid you, but you don't even know what it is I do. So that was fine. But after 6 years of working for them, they were going to be selling their company to somebody else. So now that company would have been in New Jersey, which meant that I would have had to commute every single day, would have been like another hour and a half every day for a company that I don't even have anything to do with. So it got to a point where I was like, you know what, I need to make a decision. Do I do this commute and blah, blah, blah for a company that I have nothing to do with? Or do I look for another job, which I'll probably have to commute again? Or do I just start my own company? Because I've been doing this for how many years all by myself. So I reached out to every client and I kind of said, if I branch out on my own, would you guys follow me? Now, the tricky part was the one company I was at, when I stayed 16 years and I moved to this company, every company followed me. So that showed that they valued what I did. When I mentioned that I would branch out on my own, they all agreed to follow me again.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty cool. So I even offered, I said, listen, you don't even have to pay me the first month. Let me prove to you that nothing changes. So they all paid me anyway. And, they were like, we got it, Patty, it's all good. So I wound up just starting my own company. And again, the only thing at that point that had changed was who the check got made out to, but nothing else changed. So the tricky part to that was you learn a lot right off the bat that you wouldn't have really had to deal with if you were an employee. You have all sorts of things, medical and government rules and blah, blah, blah. And like we had one company try to sue me. It was for like unfair competition, which was a total BS lawsuit. They didn't win, but still cost me stress and cost me money for legal fees for something that really, if this happened to another company and you're just an employee, you're not involved in any of that.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, this is bad. And then we had, we were representing several companies and we had one company come in and take over 3 of the companies that we represented. So it was like a 3 client loss right off the bat. We just started the company. And again, if you're an employee and a company loses clients, it doesn't affect your job right off the bat. But I'm like, oh my God, this is like 3 client loss. We have bills to pay. I'm like, this is not good.
So what did you do?
Nothing we can do. I mean, the tricky part with that too is that when we're involved with a company and we work very closely with the CEOs, CFOs and whatnot, we know a lot of what's going on and we probably would have seen that coming and could have made steps to prevent it. But a lot of times we get outsourced work from the internal IR, PR or marketing teams because they don't want to do the day-to-day work, which is fine. But that being said, in those cases, we're not really involved with the day-to-day communications that a company has. Right. So we had no clue that this was even something that was, ever going to happen. So right when we start the company, apparently this is something that was being planned for a while. But by the time it surfaced, we're now like 2 months of opening my own company. And I'm like, okay, this is bad. So, I mean, nothing you can do. It's just, upward and onward and keep moving and try to recoup the loss,
Wow. Yeah. And what was your, now at this time, were you, your family situation like, because I seem to remember you did a lot of this on your own at the same time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had 2 other people working with me at that time. One was just like me. She had, 30 something years experience. So she was very involved. The other person had about 15 years experience. But now again, I have payroll to come up with where before the company's paying for it, not me. Now I have to pay for it. I'm like, you just took money away that I was going to use to pay people. So this is not good. But these are all things that we kind of learned right off the bat, like, all right, we need to really focus on not letting this happen. It was bad because we never saw that coming because we were on the other side,
Yeah. So you started off, I mean, I don't want to make it sound bad, but you poached, right? Your clients, they followed you. And it's, I mean, it's not necessarily poaching because they also, just for anyone that's an employee, to build relationship with your clients so that if you do want to, peace out, that's pretty cool. They followed you twice.
Well, the only thing with that, just to separate, it's not like I took them from the company. They were a totally different company anyway. Like I did investor relations, they did proxy solicitation. So even if I left, basically, if they didn't come with me, they would have to find another company. They couldn't have stayed where they were at either way.
Right. Okay.
Just for law reasons.
Yeah. Just so you start off this way, and then you get hit with this 3 client loss. So I know that there are people that have experienced this exact thing just now, right?
Yeah.
And you know, especially anybody in a B2B world, like we have all lost clients in the last year, and
Yeah.
for differing reasons. You know, some got out of business, some just couldn't afford the service anymore, some unfortunately passed away, right? Like we're all experiencing this. So hitting the grindstone again, talk us through, because you know, you've, like you said, you still have payroll, and that's like a new stress too, of it's not just me that's going to suffer from this. I mean, there's at least two other families in this particular case that are paying for it, right? So talk to us about like how you get back to, you know, let's making up that revenue and going after new clients. Like what was that like?
Well, initially, it gets to a point where you're like, okay, X amount of dollars is coming in. I have to pay out X amount of dollars for A, B, C, D, E. I could either fire somebody or take a loss myself. So I wound up taking a loss myself, thinking, okay, not quite what I was looking to do right out the gate, but I value the people I have, and I'm like, okay, I think together we can kind of really push through this. So we started branching out, thinking to try to get new business. And one thing with me is I can market the heck out of any client, but I never had time to market myself, which is always an issue. So
I hear that from marketing agencies
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
That is the number one most common. Like if you were a marketing agency for marketing agencies, you'd probably be okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing with us was that I always say, like, we always were good about if we found that there was a need for something, we filled that void. So we were doing that right out the gate. And especially since I brought on that other person who was kind of coming, the other girl followed me from the other company as well. So this person I brought from the outside, but who had run in the same space as me. So it was kind of like an outsider giving her take on things. So it was actually kind of good. But we found, right off the bat, we were focusing on like the financial companies. So financial companies being closed-end funds, ETFs, BDCs, MLPs, and REITs. She worked at a company at one point who hosted an annual conference, and we found that there really was a need for that sort of thing. So we started developing an annual conference for financial companies, because when we were hosting, when we had financial clients that wanted to present themselves to the investment community, there really wasn't any other venue. So they found, we went to other conferences, but there was such a mix of presenters that you had financial, tobacco, at the end of the day, you might have, 200 people attend your booth. But when we did follow-up, we found that they were only interested in the giveaway on the table. So we're like, okay, so there's a need for this. So we were very strict on putting together a financial conference. We would only have investors, analysts, brokers, media come. It was a networking sit-down lunch, a cocktail reception, and we became very well known in the industry for hosting this event. People were coming from around the world for it. So that kind of put us on the map, which is really good. We didn't make any money on the event, which was fine. We weren't looking to. If the event, say, cost $50,000 for the networking lunch, cocktail reception, the whole venue, recordings for the interviews and whatnot, and we had 10 presenters, each presenter paid $5,000, and that covered the cost of the venue. So like I said, we did that for a long time. That was putting us on the map. So we started getting people saying, okay, these guys really know what they're doing. They have valuable people attend these events. Then we were hosting webinars, basically educating the investment community on industry topics. So say, for example, in the financial world, we had clients, there's something called Reg FD, Regulation Federal Disclosure, which had come up years ago, decades ago, about social media, and SEC basically said for insider trading sort of thing, every information has to be told at the exact same time to the whole world. So we were, we put together webinars, basically educating people. We had activists on the webinars saying, okay, what puts you on my radar, so that you knew what not to do. So these were becoming very well received, and people were saying, okay, these guys really know what they're doing. We were putting together a quarterly newsletter about industry topics. So for the financial space, just doing these little activities, which were coming from out of our pocket really for most of that, it was really just putting us as experts in that field. So even though we didn't have time to fully market ourselves, it was becoming more or less word of mouth, who these guys are.
So I'm going to dissect
Mhm.
your strategy here a little bit from somebody who looks at things on a strategic point of view. So the first thing I noticed that you did was establishing a deep customer understanding. So you took a
Yeah.
moment to understand what is our the problems that our customers are actually facing, and
Mhm.
then providing a new product offering for that solution, which is really interesting because it's important to note that you were solving for a need, not necessarily what the clients were asking for. Because I don't know that if you went to ask any of your clients what they needed, they probably wouldn't have said that. Like the Henry Ford who said, if I asked my clients what they wanted, they would have said, give me a faster horse, right? Instead of,
Yeah.
so providing a real solution. So then you provided that solution. And what's also interesting is that you essentially made an investment on the business. So you took when you were down, you took another risk. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like an all-in gutsy move right there, because a
Yeah.
$50,000 conference, when you're already down on revenue, I mean, you literally pushed it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always said that was one thing about me. I said quitting is never an option. You just have to keep, and always said I'm a perfectionist. So it's always like, what could you do to do this better? But it was
Mm,
kind of like even with the activist investors, it's kind of like I can give the best advice, but I can't force somebody to listen to me. So say, for example, when I was dealing with some of the financial companies, um, I'll give you one example. Not even with the activists, one example. When we had a mutual fund, we were representing them, and they were heavily invested in the financials. So the financials, this is years ago, started to tank, and this portfolio manager wasn't reshuffling the portfolio. So I'm like, okay, well, this is odd. So now I'm showing like competition, competitors and whatnot, and saying, okay, this is what your competitors doing. And the 800 numbers for these companies were ringing on my desk. So now my phone is blowing up, and I'm trying to tell the management, the investment management company, like, oh, just so you know, shareholders are really concerned. They need a little update, blah, blah, blah. And here's what your competition is doing. Look at their portfolio. And we basically got told it's not your job to tell the portfolio manager how to run their fund. Okay, you have to trust me that I have experience, and I'm not involved with your company. I'm the outside. I'm here to help you, but I can tell you what the outside world is looking for. So needless to say, that company didn't want to take my advice. They wound up being shut down. Again, another client loss.
ooh,
But again, we try to help. So when it came time for the activist, we had, basically, we have companies that, say for example, one company was from my old company they were approached by an activist investor. And basically what that is, if you have a company that's doing A, B, C, D, and your investors are trying to reach out to you for, saying, I don't agree with this. What do you think about that? Why are you doing this? And you don't communicate with them, they're going to basically join forces and try to take over your company. And they're very successful at doing that in many cases.
mm,
So when we try to guide a company, again, I can't force you to listen to me. I can only give you my best advice. So it got time where we were giving advice to so many people, but not everybody would listen. So we basically had an activist investor webinar. And it kind of was a little off because people were like, what is she siding with the investor, with the activist? See it as you want, but that's not what we're doing. We basically gave them the floor and said, okay, tell us what it is that puts somebody on your radar. That webinar was like so well received because people were like, okay, we
mm.
need to know what's going on. I'm like, if you don't want to listen to me, listen to them, And then we had another issue where, shareholders were trying to reach out to them and they just didn't acknowledge it, because sometimes companies, maybe management owns, 52% of the portfolio. So they don't care what you think because they own the majority and it is what it is. Yeah, that's all great. But again, don't you want to have your shareholders, keep them involved in what's going on? I mean, if the stock is going down, well, that's a good opportunity to buy more shares. If you look at the history of the stock market, it's like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. So just because it's down doesn't mean panic and sell. It means it's a great buying opportunity.
Mm.
So we had one company who they were running into an issue, and one of the shareholders was joining an activist investor campaign. And the company was like, oh my God, we need to reach out to them. And the person said, I've been trying to reach out to you for 4 years and you completely ignored me. Now you want to talk to me? No, thank
Mm.
you. So, this is all my 33 years experience. So when we came on board with Pristine, we're like, okay, one, let's have a quarterly webinar, and you reach out to all your investors and have them on board. Just to give an update on what's going on, what's new with the company, what are you changing, anything, have Q&A and let them feel involved. And then every quarter we would reach out to the institutional investors. These are people who own like large blocks of share. And I'd say probably 85 to 90% of the time, they don't need a call, but we give them an option to say, do you want to have a one-on-one conference call with the portfolio manager? They're not going to talk about anything non-public, but they'll give you an update or answer any questions. And I'd say, 85 to 90%, they don't need a call, but they appreciate,
Right.
being asked. So I'm like, these are things that, we kind of just, again, we feel that there's a need for it. We fill the void, and, people who do know us and, respect our 33 years will follow suit. And those that don't, sorry.
Yeah. There's a lot there, especially with this quarterly call, and doing that I'm going to call it a client check-in, right? Is when we're establishing a relationship with somebody that's going to be a long-term client relationship, not just a B2C, buy a product, never see you again, but some sort of service-based, we're going to be engaging regularly. I think it's important to have a conversation about what their expectations are in the beginning. Like if this was a great relationship, what would it look like for you? Like, what are your top things? And then checking in with them. Yeah.
Well, we found too with the shareholders, you have retail shareholders, which is you and me, and then you have your institutional shareholders. And 99% of the time, everything was geared towards the institutional shareholders. Well, we kept saying, okay, well, does your mom and pop have the same news or the same access to information or even the same questions that your institutional shareholders? Probably not. But 9 out of 10 times, you don't know who your retail shareholders are. So we came up with an idea to purchase a NOBO list, which is called a non-objective beneficial ownership list. This is a very tricky thing. It's not something you could just go buy. You don't have emails. It's just mailing address. So we kind of came up with a solution to get access to the NOBO list and basically give them an option to opt in and just say, because what happens is as the shareholders are calling my phone, like I would hear information about, oh, I didn't even know that the fund issued a dividend until I opened up my bank account and saw that. That was so cool. And I'm like, you didn't know? The law is that brokers are supposed to, like, these are people who the brokers own shares, represent these people. So they're supposed to, by law, keep them informed of any news and anything that's going on with the companies. Are they? Obviously not. Yeah. They're supposed to, but they're not. So we give people an opt-in to say, would you like to get information available as it becomes available? So we had hundreds and thousands of people opting in for this. So now you have exposure to your institutional and your retail investors. So the one time we did a webinar, we're like, okay, let's kind of have both on. And you could just see the difference between night and day of what they knew, what they didn't know, what their questions were. So then we would do perception studies and say, okay, give questions that will help you to know, are you doing everything right? Should you do something different? Are you giving the information that both sides want? Do we need to, any type of questions like that? And it was like night and day between the retail and institutional. But these are things that these companies would never have known otherwise. So we always try to think of what else can we do to help you be the best that you can be,
Well, that same mentality and approach applies everywhere, right? So if you're calling, the thing is, if you're calling all the time and you're soliciting feedback, one is most of the time you're going to get positive feedback. And what you're doing is your clients are basically giving you praises. So that's also, we hear what we think or what we say out loud, right? So you're getting your clients to admit you're doing a great job. And so every 3 months they're telling you you're doing a great job. They're hearing that too. Or they say, I have this problem. And now you have an opportunity to fix a problem and maintain a relationship. Because what happens, we're all customers, right? What happens when something ticks you off? Like, you don't immediately call usually. Yeah. It's not until you're done with the relationship. Right. And then at that point, you're like, I'm done. Right. Like, I want my money back. This problem has been festering for months. And the other person's the first time you hear about it. Like, I don't have a chance to change anything or fix anything or anything like that. So those quarterly check-ins are absolutely critical. And then understanding that when you say like, let's get all these other investors involved, a lot of companies are learning that lesson the hard way right now with, look at these, the Wall Street bets thing that's going on. And now these little guys are banding together, and
That's what happens. Yeah.
yeah.
Power of numbers.
And they can do it via the internet. Like the
Yeah.
world of, a lot of and this is important for those folks in the senior leadership and director in the C-suite, is that, they grew up, they've been in a company for 20 years. And let me just tell you that your experience 20 years ago is not the same as it is today. Like the world is much different. The world of marketing, the world of engaging with these people, and those non-institutional investors' ability to band together today is infinitely stronger than it ever was before, Yeah.
And while people might not have known who you were before, I mean, now with the internet, I mean, there's like trading chat rooms and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they all connect somehow. And, you could sit here and say, well, I have retail shareholders, but, we could have 5 billion of them, but they don't know each other. Yeah, well, now we have the internet and they can know each other really quick.
Yeah. And I've got this app on my phone that I can trade with.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to call anybody to make those trades anymore. I can do it myself. And have the same capabilities as these large trading companies, right? So the world is different and it's changed. And this is just a matter of the last few years.
Yeah.
So
well,
this
is the same. That's the same when you say we're trading, is that, nowadays, like Seeking Alpha, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an online portal where like news and things like that, but they have trading rooms and stuff like that. And you can, like, I can go under there, post under any old name. I can call myself like, I don't know, IR Pro. You don't know who I am. I mean, but I can set up this whole profile. And so if I want to sit here and promote Pristine, I could write these stories, like really high, high-hardy stories. So people are doing that for companies. So, it's kind of like your competitor. If you have a company that you're trying to promote and somebody else is, posting these crazy stories about them, whether they're right or wrong, investors don't know. And they're like, oh my God, this reporter said this, I need to go buy more. Yeah, but that's also your competitor. So, the whole internet's changed the whole landscape.
It absolutely has. And the other thing is that folks are much more educated and have more access to information about you and your company. And the younger generations are getting better at sniffing out the BS, right? And they take review, like they can tell when a review is fake, when it's real, or watching how companies respond to reviews. If you're only responding to the 5-star reviews and you're not responding to the 1-star reviews, like they know, okay, those 5 stars are probably fake. Like the sophistication, that's the word I was looking for. The sophistication of the customer today. They're much more sophisticated than they were 15, 20 years ago. And that is due to our ability to access information, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing sacred anymore. I mean, you can't hide anything. It's just all out there in one way or another. And if you don't know, I mean, like Google, if I just sit here and say, I need to know, where do I uncover this? Google search it. I guarantee you're going to get 100 ansers,
Right. Yeah. I have in my pocket a supercomputer capable of accessing all the knowledge mankind has ever acquired in our entire history. Right. So your bullshit is only going to get so far.
Exactly.
And that goes across the board. That goes across the board for absolutely everyone that you're engaging with. And you can maybe get away with it a little bit, but eventually everyone's going to find out, and then it all comes crashing down. And I've seen a lot of this, like with these Bitcoin guys, that they're doing these pump and dumps, right? So they get everybody, fired up, these influencers, and they get all these people and they pump up the price, and then the influencers sell their shares. Well, because, and the FEC hasn't caught up to this yet. So there's no like Bitcoin regulation. So it's not yet, but it's also one of those like gray areas where they can still catch you. But the thing is, people got wise to it now. So like, congratulations, you made some money. Now you're going to jail, and nobody else is ever going to do it again. Right. The marketplace capabilities and intelligence is something that I think you cannot underestimate anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because these scammers, they're everywhere now. Like I said, they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook, they're on everywhere. And so many people have fallen for these scams or know somebody who has, that like even now I'm getting these text messages from Venmo that basically I can win a chance. I literally just got one again today. I get them like at least once a day. Um, Notice, Venmo customer, you've been selected to receive a free gift worth up to $100 for a 3-minute survey with this link. And, of course, I'm like, why would it's weird. But minute you mentioned this, I'm like, oh my God, don't click on that. So-and-so clicked on that. They fell for a scam. So there's so many people involved that these scams are left and right, but I almost want to say they're not as productive because so many people know now, but they're everywhere. I mean, the best is LinkedIn. LinkedIn's actually had scammers on there that set up an entire profile and have connections on there, all part of this whole scam. So when you see the person, they have a profile picture and this and that, and they have all these connections and employees, and you're thinking, okay, this must be legit, all part of a scam. I'm like, wow, they become high tech now.
Yeah, right. And so it's up to us to protect ourselves. And the thing is, by doing that, we're also paying, like I get an email message and I'm looking at where did that originate from? What's after the @ sign, and looking at that information. Does that match what the subject line is? And is it, a link to download a file? Like I'm going to check the source of this link and then say, why don't you just send me the file? Why'd you send me the link? But that sort of, we've kind of been forced into it to protect ourselves, but it also helps people sniff out. Like we all do the same thing, right? You're going to go buy a product on Amazon. What do? You look at the reviews, right? And say, okay, what a percentage is the 1-star reviews? Well, let me look at the 1-star reviews because that's where we all start. Like, and we look at the 1-star and we're looking for, is it the same problem over and over? Or are there a series of different issues? And if there's series of these like one-offs, that's just, this is what the buying process looks like for customers. Like you just can't get away with being disingenuous. Your best bet is to get out there with the information. Stop trying to hide stuff. Just get out there, tell people what it is. That's how you're going to build trust and those long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Which is obviously what you did, right? For your clients.
No, but I agree with that, like building the trust. Like I'll never forget, we were representing one fund and the portfolio manager, he was so upfront and honest. Like he would have a annual meeting. He would invite shareholders and whatnot, where a lot of people, they invite them kind of, but they don't. So anyway, this guy had a lot of retail shareholders and he was downright honest. He was like, so we were, I thought we could invest in this. I took a chance. It didn't work out, but I was on top of it. I switched the portfolio. We reinvested into this and now the stock is up, blah, blah, blah. But people appreciate the fact that you were honest. I took a chance. It didn't work, but I wasn't asleep at the wheel. Like I saw it and I changed it. And, they're okay with that, because you're honest, and that goes a long way,
Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so the first time somebody finds out that you've been dishonest, if you have a chance to repair that relationship, it's going to be a long time before it happens again. And you're just better off being honest. Like they'll forgive a mistake. They'll forgive many mistakes before they'll forgive a lie.
Yeah. Rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I think that's awesome that you guys have done that and pulled in folks. And I think as an application status for anyone else is just to understand that, be open and honest about about your product, about the business, about whatever it is. You're going to get a lot further. You're going to hear no more often but you're going to hear it faster. You're going to be able to move on to the next person, quicker by doing that. What is it? The salesman hopeful, the let me think about it. You're not going to hear as many of those, you're going to hear no, but the think about it is just a nice way of saying no. Right.
Yeah. All been there, yep.
Yeah, exactly. We've all been there. Every one of us knows. And then you go and research for a while, or you make a proposal, and it never comes out to anything.
Yeah.
But the point is that you're not. Hiding is you can't get away with hiding anything anymore. And the person that is the most open, that's the most honest, that's up there and out front. And that's real, I know there's a lot of LinkedIn influencers that tell the same story, because apparently everyone has interviewed and hired somebody that didn't shake their hand or showed up late or whatever it is. So, but that doesn't build trust, right? So it's like, let's be honest and open. And that trust building, it's a little bit, maybe sometimes a slower ride, but that's the one that's going to be the most solid foundation that you can build a 30-year business on, not a 3-year little rocket ship or firework, right? Like, and then explode. I want a house. I don't want a fireworks show.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing, with us is that, even though you have hiccups and, it's, I am who I am. I mean, I'm honest. It's what we do. I can help you if you are receptive to getting the help. And if you're not, well, then that's good luck. I mean, like I said, people acknowledge what I do, and they obviously like the work that I do, because I've had 3 companies, within the past year or two, put together a marketing plan. Let me see if we're on the same page. So I put together this whole in-depth marketing plan, website audit, competitor analysis, blah, 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 blah. And then they take it and say, okay, thank you, bye. And I'm like, well, obviously they know that I know what I'm doing. That's why they wanted it. But the funny part was, I've never heard of you after that. Well, if you knew how to do what I told you to do in that thing, your name would be everywhere. So all I could say at that point is good luck to you. I mean, obviously you have to understand I have 33 years experience. I know what I'm doing. If you're willing to let me help you, and again, I'm on the outside. I'm here to help you. I'm not in your company trying to get brownie points. I'm here to help you because I'm in the middle of both sides of your audience.
Right.
So it's frustrating because you get used a lot, but at the same token, it's kind of like I get somebody, now we get a lot of people who are looking to start their company. But I get told, like, well, pay for performance. No, I mean, even say for media, like the whole world has changed. Like years ago, you had reporters writing about a company. Now, probably 75% of those are contributors, which are probably your competitor who's writing about them and not you anyway. Out of the 25% that's left, 15% of them are paid reporters. So yeah, I can get you a Forbes or Fortune article tomorrow for $10,000. It doesn't work that way. So the other, out of all 100% reporters, you have 10% that are writing stories. Now you have to sit here and say, okay, who are they? What are they writing about? They're probably not going to do a feature story on you, but I can probably get you quoted here and there as an expert in certain things to build that relationship, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of work, and they want to pay me for performance. I'm not right out of high school. You got to give me a little credit here. You either pay me for my job or good luck. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
I have a friend who, or a contact who charges for proposals.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants a proposal, he has a fee for it. Oh, that's a technique, I guess. Like, you're gonna weed out the people that are serious. And I know, I've heard of stories of this guy that I follow, and he says, he's got a client where they've got 2 different proposal types. One is, I'll put whatever you want, so you can go to your current vendor and get a reduction in price. He's like, I'll put whatever price you want for it. And he charges like, I don't know, $100 for that one, or $1,000. I don't remember what it is, but, and then there's another one that he's like, or you can ask me for a real proposal about what I can actually do. And then there's a different price for that one. So, but it's like, because I know I'm not going to do the work, so you can go to your current provider and get a price reduction. So, you're going to get, $5,000 price reduction. It'll cost you $1,000 for me to get it. Right. Like that's
Well, like even with our connections, like, through all the years, we have like 800,000 people in our database. Investors, institutional, retail, analysts, brokers, media, but we also have investors, angel investors, VCs, LPs, hedge funds, like people who are investing in like seed or growth, companies just starting out or whatnot. So people always want access to that. And then we'll get, well, if you introduce me to somebody and they, help us raise our capital, then we'll pay you. Well, I'm not a licensed broker, so we can't kind of do to the extent that they want. But even if I did do that, once I set up, I can pitch your story to anybody. But once they have that like first conversation, I'm out of the picture anyway, because who's to say I was even involved in that? So again, it's like, these are valuable contacts. We've had people, clients and potential clients that just want to buy our databases. I'm like,
I was going to tell you, you could probably sell that.
I know, but I'm like, that's my whole business. If I give you that, then who needs me, So I'm like, no, that was one of the cool things, like even with our newsletter, when we were putting together a newsletter, we had clients in it, but then we also had other people just to kind of give it bulk. We had everything industry specific news. But, people who weren't clients were like, okay, do you have any news, any information that we can kind of include in our newsletter? But then people got to the point where they're like, well, they're going to distribute it to their database. We don't need to hire them, So we were doing a lot. And then it got to the point where like, okay, it's helping them more than it's helping us. So then we were like, all right, let's just take a break from it for a little while.
Sure. So if somebody wanted to, listen to you talk and they're like, hey, we could probably use this, who might that be, and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, they could always find out more about us on our website, which is www.pristineadvisors.com, and that's advisors, ERS. My email is pbaronowski@pristineadvisors.com. On there, we have, all about us on our website. We also have, blogs, our videos, our webinars, and all that good stuff. Like I said, any company that's listed on the stock exchange is somebody who's receptive for investor relations. The tricky part is getting them to understand why they need this, because like I say, investor relations is something that many people don't realize they need. And by the time they do, it's already too late.
Right.
Public relations is anybody who's looking to be marketed to the public. I know some people just feel like, we put out something once a month, that's more, it's a matter of really like, who's the client? Who's your competitors? Where are they? Do they even know about you? Where is your competitor? Like we do a whole analysis. Where's your competitor? Where are they posting stuff? Who's following them? Where are they even finding out about this company? Are you involved in that? Because, there's a whole lot of work involved in marketing a company, and we put together this whole plan. But, again, most companies just, if they have an internal person, a lot of times they're dealing with the annual things, and there's a lot of day-to-day functionality. So we'll get outsourced stuff, for that, which is totally fine. We're happy to do whatever. But yeah, that's kind of who we work towards and how what they need us for.
So if you have somebody internal, you probably don't have somebody internal with 30 years experience in this particular category in a list like you guys do. And while they're back and forth from the legal office, making sure they're hitting all those legal requirements, you guys can be helping them out with the day-to-day and improving those overall relationships.
We believe it or not, we do, companies starting out, we help them with their IPO, we help them, their bell ringing, once they go to market. We do everything from soup to nuts. So it really is just a matter of getting the company to understand who we are and what we do. Like the tricky part was like, we started Pristine Advisors. And I remember meeting somebody at a meeting one time who actually wound up being a client, but they were like, oh my God, you're Patricia. Everybody told me I needed to talk to Patricia. I didn't know who you were. Technically, if you Googled me, you would have found me, but whatever. So then we kind of changed the name to Patricia Baronowski, Pristine Advisors, but it's a lot of mouthfuls. So, it's kind of like, here's who I am. A lot of it is through word of mouth, just, trying to, get people to see who you are and what you do. And the biggest trick is to getting them to understand, if they don't know of you, getting them to understand why they need this,
Love that.
Because even if they say we're doing great, we do all this already. If your competitor is doing, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, and P, and you're doing ABC, look at how much you're losing.
Right.
You might think that you're doing enough, but you could be doing more, and think of the revenue in the end. Whether you're selling a shirt or having a company, your whole revenue stream could like double, triple, quadruple if you did it the right way, or if you did anything at all,
Yeah.
But again, what do I know? What do I know?
So we're going to drop your contact information there at the bottom so folks can get in touch with you. This is really outstanding. You gave us a whole bunch of good stuff. And then those are also really great general habits for anyone in any sort of service-based industry, which I think is absolutely critical. So
we have case studies for every type of company, every type of thing. And, it's not just me talking out my butt. I could definitely have proof of, case studies that we've done this before.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming. And I look forward to, getting all the feedback that we get from these great episodes.
Me too. Right. This is marketing for me. Love it.
All right. There we go. Awesome.
Thank you.